hopefully for a while, doing this. So my closing words to you are, the decisions you make today are very important and they're heart-wrenching. If you've been working on the exchange and you've been working on Medicaid, here you are in a state that seems to go back and forth and does a lot of work but can't quite close the deal, or is interested in the idea but gets a lot of pushback. Don't think of these as one-time issues. These are not decisions that will be made once and for all. They're decisions that will be made and will be revisited. And they're important. But what you need to do is not feel like they're the only important decisions, because what you really need to do is move through those and broaden out into the parts of the ACA that aren't getting as much attention, but are as important, or I might even argue are more important in some instances, for the long-term sustainability of all three of the things that we're working for: cost, quality, and access. And I assure you, other states will be flailing around and taking a somewhat chaotic path forward, just as you are. But I really believe that as the years go by, we're going to find ourselves in a much better place with a much better model for thinking about improvement than we had just a few decades ago. Thank you very much. So there are microphones, which, since this is being taped, people have asked that you go to. Yes.
Hi, this is Tim McBride from Washington University. Thanks for a great talk. And I was glad to see you do what I often do, which is to press people with that CBO slide at the end. So I want to get into the weeds with you a little bit on integrating Medicaid with the exchanges since you were there. And I want to thank you for helping me a little bit with an impression that I've been in for a while about trying to figure out how Missouri can implement the Medicaid expansion. And your story about, at the end there, about doing that delivery system story, I think is really got my mind thinking. So I'm not sure if it'll work in this state, but it's got my mind thinking. So as we try to sell this to the policymakers in our state, one of the issues we have is, as you may know, we had a ballot issue in the state. We've said, hell no, we're not going to do a state exchange, and so the governor's already told the feds we're going to do a federal exchange. So if we were to make the argument that to go along the lines of your story about Medicaid, and we have a federal exchange, and if you think about one of the things that was intriguing to me about these people that would be bouncing between Medicaid and the exchange, that would create a lot of delivery issues, a lot of problems for eligibility and outreach. Can you help me think through some of the problems that would create if it's a federal exchange and the state has no involvement in this? How is that going to work if the state is really hands off on this? What sort of stories can we tell to the state? Or is that going to work okay? You've thought a lot about this state exchange, and so I'm thinking about these churners and people that go from 125 to 150 and back and forth again. Can you tell me about that story?
Yes. The first thing to say is that this is hard even in the best of circumstances. There's a degree of complexity in this law. I mean, we're starting with a complex healthcare system, and frankly, this adds some complexity that hopefully in the long run can be sort of worked out. But in the short run, we've created a whole new eligibility category called eligibility for tax credits that didn't exist before. And so now we're going to have people moving between that and Medicaid. Now, of course, better to move between a tax credit and Medicaid than uninsured and Medicaid from the family's perspective. But still, it's from a government administration perspective, we've got to get people in the right place. The beautiful vision, and I think there are at half a dozen states that really have this vision and are on the way to it, is a true single integrated eligibility system for everyone. Basically, everyone walks in, anyone walks in the door, you gather some basic information, you figure out what they're eligible for, you present their options. They have different options if they're Medicaid than tax credit, but you wouldn't even have to tell them whether they're Medicaid or tax credit. You would just say, these are the coverage options you have, this is what the benefits look like, this is how much it will cost you, pick which one you want. You would never have to name it. And there are some states, how seamlessly those will run January 1st, 2014, I can't say, but that is certainly the vision, and I think they will get there even if they're not quite ready on day one. There really are two ways of thinking about the interaction with a federal exchange. One is a totally hands-off relationship with them, and the other is a hands-on relationship while acknowledging that they're still running the exchange. So I'm taking as a given your starting point that you're going to have the federal exchange. If you truly were hands-off and like pretended they didn't exist, you're creating some major problems. I mean, understand that I didn't bring the slide, but there have been two really good studies that show income volatility in that income range, and they've done estimates of the literally the percentage of people who will start the year in Program A and end it in Program B, and it's in the mid double digits depending on how you count it. But we're talking, hundreds of thousands of people within a state who are likely to change status. If you literally pretend that they don't exist, what will happen is the federal exchange will, if they get someone who they think looks Medicaid-like, they will have to hand it over, but the handoff will be sloppy. And frankly, it'll be very expensive. I mean, one of the advantages of the simplification of Medicaid eligibility in the Affordable Care Act is that an exchange can do a lot of the work to determine Medicaid eligibility because you don't have income disregards, you don't have asset tests, you don't have all these things that made it complex. So if you pretend they aren't there, you're actually going to be wasting a lot of administrative dollars, something that I find no one really wants to do. And you're also going to have lousy customer service. So you're going to have people who find out later. And you're also going to have really mad providers because they're going to have patients who would have had a payment source that is missing. So I mean,